Hello, I'm Zoe, your dietitian. Welcome back to another on-demand course. Today we are talking about measuring success. So this is actually one that is not necessarily exactly nutrition related, but it's so important because on any kind of journey, specifically a weight loss journey, we want to be measuring progress and measuring success. But normally, when we think of this in terms of a weight loss journey, that's what we use to measure success, weight lost. And although that is just one way to measure progress and measure success, it's not the only way, and it shouldn't be either. So that's what we're going to go through today. So let's talk about different types of goals. So we've got an outcome goal and we've got a behavior goal, and they're different. So outcome goals are not fully in our control. There are a lot of other outside factors that could be playing a role in whether this outcome comes to fruition or not. A behavior goal is something that is completely in our control, and we can really put the emphasis and the control in our own hands and help this goal come to fruition. So let's talk about some examples of each. So an outcome goal, my favorite example of this is the scale, the number on the scale. So how is that not fully in our control? Well, we've got hormonal influences. Your stress level could influence the number on the scale, your sleep quality from the night before, your hydration status, whether you've gone to the bathroom. So maybe you have an outcome goal of, I want to lose 10 pounds, or my goal is to lose 10 pounds, but because of all those things that we were just talking about, there are so many other things that could be factoring in that you can't necessarily control. So although, having an outcome goal is still nice and good, we have to identify that we aren't in, the driver's seat of that. Now, where we are able to control are our behaviors and our habits to help that outcome happen. So that's why we actually really do want to set mostly behavior goals. Things like getting a certain number of steps in, getting your protein in, different things that you can focus on a daily basis that are your habits, your behaviors that ultimately help that outcome happen, but you can have the control. So if you can think of any other examples of that, I'd love to have you come into a support group or a Q&A and we can talk about it more. So let's talk about that number on the scale. So there are pros and cons, and some of the pros are that it is an objective piece of data. It's a very easy measuring tool to see what, we use this in the doctor's offices, we use it, I'm sure you've been using this all your life, right, is the number on the scale. And a good thing for that number is that we can look at trend over time. Okay, is it trending downward? Are we trending upward? And so instead of focusing specifically on those individual numbers, day-to-day fluctuations, we do want to focus on the trend, so that can be a benefit. Now, some of the cons, of course, is that just like we were talking about before, it is just one piece of data. So it's not the complete picture of your body composition. Body composition meaning fat mass versus muscle mass. So let's say you've been working really hard with your nutrition and your exercise, but the number on the scale hasn't moved. It's the exact same. But then you do your circumference measurements, or you've gotten your body fat percentage measured, and maybe you've actually lost 2 pounds of fat and gained 2 pounds of muscle. So that balances out to the same number on the scale, which if you're only using that as your only measure of success, that will be very frustrating. But maybe through your circumference measurements, the body fat measure, you'll see that, oh my gosh, you've actually made progress with your body composition. So that's one of the cons, is that it is just one number. It's not a complete picture of everything that's going on in your body. Something else that can happen with the scale is that it can lead to a very obsessive relationship or behaviors around the scale, weighing yourself every day and maybe even allowing your emotions to be dictated by that number on the scale. Is the number on the scale that you see every morning making you feel bad and influencing what you're eating throughout the day? Are you skipping meals? Are you not eating enough? Or are you making poor choices because of whatever you're seeing? So we really do want to detach our emotions from that number on the scale and really try to work towards detaching our reliance on the scale so that we do not reinforce this obsessive relationship. And like we were talking about earlier, the scale is an outcome. And so because there are so many outside factors, this can be a con. You can't really control what your hormones are doing for us, to a certain extent, for the purposes of this presentation, right? And so we don't want to focus all of our attention on an outcome and not pay attention to the behaviors that get to that outcome, right? So I'd love for you to brainstorm what are some other pros and cons. Also, if you have a piece of paper out or a journal, do some journaling around this. What are some pros and cons for you of using the number on the scale as a measure of success? So now let's talk about some non-scale ways that you can measure success. And I think these are so much more valuable and important because it shows that there can be progress made and success shown even if you don't even look at the number on the scale. So how your clothes are fitting, that goes along with that body composition, right? Like if you're losing fat, even if you are preserving your muscle or building muscle, your clothes will start fitting better. Same thing with those circumference measurements. Whether you have a tape measure and you're keeping track of your measurements, that is another great way that has nothing to do with the number on the scale, but it can show that your behaviors are leading to this great success. Energy levels. Maybe you've already experienced this, or maybe you can take a mental note of how you're currently feeling and go back to assessing once you're making these changes and you're working on your nutrition, how can you see a difference in your energy levels? And this is something that I hear patients talk about all the time, how they feel so much more energized and mood improved, sleep improved. And so there are so many of these other things improving the quality of your life that, like I said before, has nothing to do with the number on the scale. And this one, performance in workouts, that could mean performance, whether that's walking faster, walking longer, lifting heavier weights, being able to do more repetitions. So performance is kind of a broad term, right? But there can be so many little areas that you are seeing improvements in your workouts. And that is, I think, huge, because if you're feeling good during your workouts and you can see that you are more energized and able to have more endurance or more strength, then that's really great motivation to want to keep going, right? So what are some non-scale ways that you either currently measure success or that you can think that you want to start incorporating to measure success without using the scale? Same thing, jot it down, think about it. Okay, so now let's go to those behavior goals. So we talked about an outcome goal, the number on the scale. So let's talk about what's in your control, what you can put your focus and energy towards in order to help that outcome happen. So specifically, different nutrition targets are really great behavior goals that you can work on every single day. Getting in however much specific protein you may need. We can talk about that more if you have questions about that. Hitting your specific water goal. Maybe you're trying to hit a specific number of veggie goal, whether it's a number of servings or a pound, whatever you're working on in terms of your nutrition, but setting specific goals around that. And then, like I said before too, a step goal or an exercise goal, whether that is going for a walk every day or going to do some strength training 2 days a week. You can see how it's a specific goal that is your behavior and your habit. And some lifestyle goals are important as well. Yes, nutrition and exercise are our main focuses when it comes to weight loss, but sleep and stress and those sorts of things do play a role. So setting specific goals around maybe bedtime or nighttime routine or improving your sleep hygiene can help you increase your weight loss. Same thing with stress. So figure out what your favorite stress management activity is and make time for that on a regular basis. What are some other goals that you can think of that are in your control, that are part of your behaviors? And maybe start thinking about that and setting some goals around that. So let's talk about accountability, because accountability is truly the night and day between having a goal and accomplishing the goal. I don't know where the statistic came from, but one time I've heard that 80%, like if you have accountability, you're 80% more likely to achieve that goal. So there are a lot of ways that you can actually hold yourself accountable. And so that might look like making a daily checklist of those behavior goals, checking it off every day that you accomplish it. Maybe you like looking at a calendar better and crossing off the days that you've accomplished your goals, or writing down what you want to accomplish for the next day, kind of having those visual reminders. Tracking apps can be helpful too, not necessarily food tracking, but meaning like maybe if you're tracking your hydration or your steps, or even goal tracking apps if you're more of a digital person rather than a pen and paper person. I love the concept of journaling, not only to hold yourself accountable, talking about where you're at in your journey, maybe what you were challenged with that day or week, what you're working on, but also you can use journaling as a great way to hold yourself accountable with your food and your nutrition. So maybe that doesn't even mean that you're writing down what you're eating, but how you're feeling and what your body's telling you before and after those meals. So you can use that to hold yourself accountable, to say, oh, when I ate this, I know that I actually didn't feel so good. So let's shift and make sure that I'm making good choices so that I'm giving my body what makes it happy and feel the best. And then support system is so huge. So this can be a support system at home, whether that's a partner or a family member. This could be an accountability buddy that maybe you just text with or that you meet up for walks. Having that support system is so critical. But this is a support system too, our nutrition program. Coming to the support groups, coming to the classes regularly, meeting with me. That's all another form of support that allows you to know that you're not in this alone and we've got your back, and it'll really, really help you stay accountable. So I'd love to know, what are some other ways that either you are currently holding yourself accountable, or what is something that you can start incorporating if you're not doing any of these things already, because remember, accountability is key. So finally, we are going to do some goal setting. So Maybe you've heard about SMART goals before, maybe you haven't, but regardless, setting SMART goals is super important because it takes a vague goal into an actionable goal. So SMART stands for specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely. So it's an acronym, but it also, it's a fun little reminder. So let's talk about what the difference is between maybe a regular goal or a vague goal and turning it into a SMART goal. So a goal that we could think of is, I want to eat healthier. Okay, like that's great, good for you, but that doesn't have any, oomph or meaning behind it. How can you take action on that? So that's what we call a vague goal. So let's hone that into a SMART goal. So maybe that looks like, I am going to eat 2 servings of vegetables every day with dinner for the next week. See how we turned it into a more specific, honed-in goal? Another example is, I want to exercise more. Okay, let's hone that into, I'm going to go for a walk for 15 minutes, 3 days a week with my neighbor. So you have it being measurable and specific, but here it's a big thing. It's also achievable and realistic. I don't want, it's great to have lofty goals. That's awesome, but I would rather you have realistic goals that you can hit and feel successful about, and then increase it after that. So instead of saying, if you're saying, I want to exercise more, and you're currently not exercising at all, even if this is a SMART goal, I'm going to go to the gym for an hour, 6 days a week. Is that realistic from starting at 0? Maybe not. So it's more about those baby steps and making them realistic, but also actionable. Okay? So I'd love for you to write those down, maybe even if you can think of a vague goal that you currently have, and turn it into a SMART goal. And then come to the Q&A, come to a support group, and share it with me. I want to hear, and then that can be a good way to hold yourself accountable as well. So I hope that this was helpful to you. I hope that this provided a little bit more insight and a different perspective of goal setting and how to measure success aside from the number on the scale, right? So hope you have an awesome rest of your day. I look forward to seeing you live in the group classes, and we will talk to you soon.